I appreciate it, brother. Man, you just got back from Tokyo last week, did you?
Yeah, I did. Tokyo, have you been there?
It's on our bucket list, dude. Like for years, I'd been saying to my wife, I'm like, all right, that's where I want to go. For whatever reason, she for a long time wasn't that interested. And then I think a number of Australians the last couple of years had started traveling there and coming back with great stories about hot spas and cold plunge pools and saunas and lovely people and very timely transport. And all of a sudden, my wife started going, you know what? It actually sounds more appealing than what I thought. What was the experience like?
It was all those things you said, man. Their train system is probably the greatest achievement of mankind that I've ever experienced. It's like every 3 minutes there's a train. I think all the train like rival private companies are sharing tracks, so they're like competing for the consumer dollar with efficiency. So yeah, you can get everywhere really quick out of Tokyo. I mean, there's 14 million people there, man. And they're all stacked on top of each other. Like every business is like 5 stories high, and you have to accommodate to looking up to find whatever like bar or Shibu place you're going to. Um, but yeah, dude, the onsen there was like it's like a public bath, but it was in our hotel, so it was just for guests of the hotel, and you just go and you take a shower, and then you hang out in like 36 inches of water with a bunch of nude men, and often children too. There was like a couple like 12-year-old boys in there with their dads, and I'm just nude in front of them. And I don't know what you do in that situation. You can't fluff because they're already there, so you just have to like sit there with your tiny adult penis in front of this child and not make eye contact. But the food was great. The people were super nice. Everyone's Japanese. That's my biggest takeaway.
Dude, that's so funny. You're the kind of guy I'd want to go to an onsen with because any other adult man with a tiny little penis is the only kind of person I'd want to go into those with. It's weird, bro. Like I've got a friend who lives in Holland. He's been there for 10 years and he had the same experience. He said he went to he moved over there with his girlfriend and they had a sauna in their house. He goes, we went and sat
Yeah.
in the sauna and the whole family came in nude and I was in my jocks. And they looked at me and go,
Oh.
what are you doing, bro? Like what this is ridiculous. So he
Oh.
had to go out and get his little bean out, and walk back in there with the family, and act as naturally as he can. But he said to me, he's like, "Man, Aussies are so strange when it comes to nakedness." And I assume, like, we're pretty similar to the Americans in that sense. We're trying to stay as kitted up as possible to, I guess, hide our hideous bodies in a lot of senses. So you get put in a situation like that, and trying to act naturally is. How'd you go with it? Have you played in enough high school football teams to be relatively comfortable with it, or was it a new kind of experience for you as well?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't think that you can ever accommodate to being nude around a child. Hopefully you don't. Uh, but yeah, I mean, my wife was having a hoot, dude, and she was like, "You got to go to the onsen. You're gonna love it." And I was like, "All right." So I went down there in my trunks and everything, and then just there was no one in there, so I got in. And then people came in and they were nude, and I was like, "Fuck!" So I got out and took off my trunks, and then just like sat there with them. And you don't talk, obviously, because I don't speak Japanese. But then it turned out my wife was having so much fun down there because she was nude with a bunch of like 24-year-old Australian girls. So she had a completely different experience than me. Because we at breakfast, she like saw a couple of these girls, and they were like, "Hey, Emily," and she was like, "Oh, those are the girls from the onsen," and I was like, "Yeah, of course you loved it down there." It was like a phantasmagoria. It was just these beautiful. I mean, Australian people are gorgeous, dude. I feel like you guys are allowed to be nude, unlike Americans. We should be covered up. We should be ashamed.
That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I've got to be cautious because my wife listens to these podcasts. I was going to say, I would have no issues if there was more of a relaxed vibe on the beaches over here with bathing. Mind you, it's getting close with the bathing suits here. I'm not sure if they're doing that in America at the moment, but there's not much
No.
going on. Like we're one step away from pretty much having an onsen on every public beach in Australia. I walked down there the other day and was shocked. I just start meditating, taking deep breaths, and walk back to my car to catch my breath because it was shocking what I was there with my sister, and the fact she was comfortable in what she was wearing was a
Oh no.
worry. Yeah, it was uncomfortable, man. It was a strange experience. My first experience was we went to Spain in 2017, and
Yeah, same. Yeah.
dude, it was a crazy experience. We were sitting on a beach, and we were there for 3 weeks, and my wife was going, "All right, I'm going to get my boobs out at some stage. Like it's essential to me that I do it." She goes, "Just let me build up the confidence to do it." And bro, a week and a half in, she didn't want to put a short shirt back up. We were fantastic for me. She was very fit, but the problem was, brother, we went for a walk down. We were in Barcelona. We were going for a walk,
Yeah.
and we got to a beach and we were sitting on like a ledge. Just look, it was a beautiful lookout. The water looked lovely. The atmosphere was great. The weather was nice. And all of a sudden, these blokes, like gorgeous blokes, came out just absolutely ripped, and they were doing a lot better than me in many respects. And they just started walking circles. It was like a strange mating call. I was sitting there with my wife, and after about 15 minutes, I go, babe, like, there's a true story. I go, what do you reckon we go and get something to eat? And she goes, I reckon, how about we just stay another 15 minutes? I go, well, come on. That's my only objection to nude beaches and nakedness in general is, she starts to get awareness of what she could be working with rather than what she's got.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's the biggest fear is that the biggest, beatiest cock you've ever seen is gonna walk by, and your wife's gonna have the wondering eye, and just she'll look at you with just like this beaten, broken face of disappointment, and you're like, yeah, I know, I'm well aware, I know
Mm.
what else is out there. I probably know a lot more than you do, you know?
Oh, dude,
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was the same thing when we went to Barcelona and Valencia, and we have friends who live in Barcelona, and we went down to Valencia, and like right away, our friend Tessa just dumps him out. And my wife's like, oh, I'm going to do that. And then, dude, I swear, like, there was like five, probably 12-year-old boys, and they were just circling my wife and my friend Tessa. They kept going to get ice cream cones, and then they would like just lasciviously lick these ice cream cones and stare at my wife's tits. And as soon as that ice cream cone was gone, they'd go get another one. So they probably had, 1,200 calories worth of ice cream just trying to get their little peckers hard.
oh, dude, that's amazing.
I'm
Just
all
a
for
shame.
that though. I'm excited when a kid like his first like live pair of tits is my wife's. I think that's pretty cool. He's gonna
Well, I
remember
think
that
it's
forever.
exactly right. And it's inspiring to you just as a reminder to show you what you're lucky enough to have. Because in most respects, and I've seen a
Correct.
few photos of your wife on Instagram, and I think it's safe to say, without causing too much of a rift in our friendship too early, we're both batting well out of our league. And congratulations
Yeah,
to you for
yeah.
that. So, and it's also nice. Like if I'd be exactly the same, brother. Like if I saw a couple of teenage kids walking past, licking their seventh ice cream just to get a glimpse at my wife, I would take that as a compliment to me.
Well, Tyson, I appreciate you trying to lump yourself into having the same physical abnormalities as me, but you're doing okay, buddy. You're all cheekbones and bright blue eyes, so yeah, we have different crosses to bear, man. I'm sure your wife and you have a very active, uh, intense lovemaking schedule. So
No,
yeah, I'm
dude.
very
She
lucky
gave
for my
birth.
wife.
Yeah, I mean that's a big stereotype. She gave birth to her second kid nearly 6 months ago, and you couldn't be further from the truth. And I'm very disappointed about that. Despite my
Mm.
moves, my charm, it's I'm actually tempted to sleep in the upstairs bedroom at the moment, based on the fact that my new child makes some noises I didn't know babies could make. So lovemaking is very low on the schedule. I'm going to have to lift my game, but brother, it's that's so funny, man. It was a good experience overall. Though getting to Japan, and that's one of my biggest regrets. I've got a few tattoos that are hidden under this zebra shirt, and as soon as I got them, I caught up with a mate who's a big
Oh
fan of
yeah,
Japan, and he's like, "Yeah,
yeah,
you wouldn't be able to use these pools now because, like, I don't know
no,
if this is just in a traditional sense." Yeah, interesting. Did you have to cover that up?
yeah.
I got a tramp stamp which I try and cover up at the best of times, but I imagine it's magnified in an onsen.
Well, yeah, but I mean, in the onset, it's kind of like prison rules. Your back is against the wall, and so I don't think anyone's going to see anything on your back. But yeah, I mean, it said explicitly in the onset, it was like you cannot have tattoos in here. But I just got in, and pretending like I couldn't read English, I guess was my defense, even though I'm clearly American. Um, but yeah, my wife has like four very small tattoos on her ankles, and she had no issue. And uh, I don't know who's in charge of like going to check people's bodies for markings at the hotel, but I think they were busy that week, so I was in there fine. Like the big public ones outside, like when you see like the people like swimming with monkeys or whatever, like in the woods, those hot springs. I think those are like very, very heavily guarded, and there's a strict no tattoo mandate because of like the yakuza history of the tattoo. I saw dudes walking around Japan with like face tattoos and shit, wearing the sharpest suits I've ever seen, and I really wanted to just go up and be like, "Hey man, you're cool. I want you to know this is a cool look." I'm sure that would have bummed them out coming from me. No one wants me to call them cool.
It's very strange. It's always a strange thing. I feel like I don't know if respect is the right word, but I feel that same thing. I was at the Comics Lounge here in Melbourne a few weeks ago, and a guy walked
I've been
down the
there, yeah,
stairs as, oh, you have?
yeah, yeah. When I was down there, I was down there in May of last year with Tim Dillon, and then I opened for him, and then I did a couple like extra nights. I did like 5 days in Melbourne, and went to the Comics Lounge. It was cool.
Dude, were
It's a
you
good club.
I went and saw, was that May that Tim was here? Because I went and saw him at the Palais, and he had an Aussie
Yeah,
guy supporting him at the time.
I think
Um,
he had Nick. I think he had that Nick guy opening for him.
yeah, it was too. Oh,
Yeah,
dude, I had no
yeah,
idea. I had no idea you were down.
yeah, that weekend when he was there, like in Sydney and Melbourne, was my sister's wedding, and I was in the wedding. So like I didn't get to do those, and then Tim calls me the night of the wedding, and he's like, "Is it over?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "The wedding, is it done?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay." And then the next thing is I get a screenshot of like a first class ticket to meet him in Adelaide. So I got to do Adelaide, I got to do Perth with him, and then we went up to the Daintree Rainforest for like 5 days, and then he bailed, and then I went down to Sydney and Melbourne for like a week. I really
Man,
liked Australia, man. You guys are fucking wild.
it's a wild place. I don't know, dude. The last couple of years have been real. I guess like everywhere in the world, the last couple of years have been strange in Australia. Like I felt like, and this is I guess controversial to some Australians, but I felt like it was the first time in my life I didn't want people to know that I was from Australia, just because I got friends in sort of conservative America who are looking at
You
us
sound
in Melbourne.
American.
Yeah, they were looking at us over here, dude. I sound like I was in Central Point in Medford in Oregon, and I
Yeah.
walked into a town with "fuck Joe Biden" flags at the front of their house, and I thought I can't wait to hear what these guys think about me and my culture. And
Oh yeah.
I was very quick to find out. But dude, I'm so glad you loved it, man, because I feel like now actually, see, probably the last 12 months, things have started to feel a bit more normal down here, which has been amazing. And everyone's a lot more relaxed. But it was the first time I thought, we're breaking the stereotype of how relaxed Australians are at the moment. Everyone's so fucking intense. But yeah,
Well, yeah,
especially
like I
up
think
in,
that at least my like idea of Australians were like these like cool. Everyone's at the beach, and you guys like have that outlaw nature that's like in your blood. And it was very weird as an American to like watch you guys kind of follow the rules, you know? Because I thought you guys would be the first one burning down the old palace down there, but no, like it seemed like you guys were in line for the most part.
dude, I was down there with my flamethrower going, hey, come and help. And everyone was saying, no, you can't because you're further than 5Ks from my home. It was, what's that movie with Will Ferrell from like the early 2000s where he's running along the road and a cop pulls
Old
him over and is
school,
like, dude, what are you doing? Yeah, yeah. It's like,
yeah,
we're streaking.
yeah.
We're streak.
Uh-huh. Who's
I
we?
was doing that with a flame. That was, yeah, brother. It was a weird experience, but man, it was. I'm not sure if you're allowed to say this yet. I'm sure you can, but it was interesting in the comedy scene because there was a couple of like speakeasy vibe places just popping up all over the city where and it was weird just getting messages on Signal saying if you want a gig, there's going to be 100 people at this place. Just enter this code and follow the blue line,
Oh
which
wow.
was at the at the in our first lockdown. I thought, that's a bit silly. But by the time it got to our seventh lockdown, I thought, well, sign me up. I'll be happy to be on that list. And it was amazing to
Yeah.
see how many. It was like an underground church in China. It was, but with worse jokes. It was a strange experience, but also beautiful, man. It was really nice. Where are you based, brother? Like, what was the vibe like where you were the last couple of years?
I live an hour north of Denver in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is
Mm-hmm.
where the second largest university in Colorado is. And my wife's a doctor, and
Yeah, yeah.
she started in the hospital like May of 2020. So it was pretty heavy, man. All the like in March of 2020, I was out filming my special, and like the last night was the night that America shut down, like March 15th or whatever. And then she was doing a rotation in New Orleans, so we went to New Orleans, and as soon like the hospital just said no residents. So we spent that like they canceled her work because it was so hairy, and and then we were in New Orleans for like the first month. And I don't know if you know about New Orleans, man, but it's like the party capital of the United States. And it's just like the streets are fucking packed with people dumping their tits out and like eating toads, whatever the weirdest shit you can find. And it was crazy because like the streets were empty. It was very much like post-apocalyptic. And then my wife was like, she had to get tested every day for work. It was very strict. There was no gigs. I think the first gigs I did that year were like June in Wyoming, which is pretty much like the Australia of America. It's like our outback. Um, so yeah, like, and those were still outside, and people, I mean, Colorado's weird because it's so purple. It's like the birthplace of the American Libertarian Party. So it's very much like I'm gonna own a gun and I'm cool if my neighbors are homosexual and smoke weed, but just don't like come on my land and bother me. So, and what's weird too about that whole time was like there was a lot of like, like marches due to like racial inequity and like, police murders and stuff. So it was really weird to like, and I'm not trying to sound like a dick, but like it's really weird for these people who were like very like I wore a mask, like I respected it. I followed the rules because I saw how seriously my wife was taking it. It was weird for all these people who like were like wearing masks and like very heavy about it, like scolding you for like not having it over your nose at the grocery store. And then, but like they would like be in the streets, like with their shirts off, like completely masked, like shoulder to shoulder with other people, like 10,000s deep, marching on Denver and the various cities throughout America. That dichotomy was weird to watch, and that like dissonance between those two stances of like follow the rules, except for like when I'm not following the rules. Um, and I engaged. I was out there. It was a good excuse to get outside. Go throw
That's for
some
sure.
bricks at cops. Yeah, my sister lives across the street from the Denver police station. We were out there every morning, dude, just like blasting music and firing bottle rockets, and it was fun.
Oh, dude, it sounds like an absolute blast. It sounds like a blast. Yeah, it was weird, man. We had obviously like the BLM rallies were taking place over here as well, and it was interesting. We had the same conversations. It was the people that would walk along the beach where we live and say, "Hey, put your mask on." We're down there, as you say, 10,000 deep and just ready to party. It was a very strange thing to watch, and the most fun thing during the time was just sitting back and watching arguments online, and just watching both sides of the argument fall apart at some point during the discussion,
Oh yeah,
but then just dig deeper into their own point. And it was a yeah, dude, it was a strange experience. But I keep saying I'm so glad we talk about it. It's even more so in the States at the moment, I guess, but especially here in Australia, it's starting to not be every single conversation, which is beautiful because there was nothing more I could say about it. I was like, okay, I think that was the last COVID comment. I think I'm done. And to just reflect on it now and to be able to have some conversations without all the emotional tension, I go, what a relief that was. How was Japan, bro?
was
Because I
it
know
was it that gnarly down there for y'all? Like, were you guys like afraid to even discuss it with each other?
I would say that if you had the opinion, so Australia was very, especially Victoria. So Victoria, where I am, Melbourne is very similar to. I don't think it's as extreme, but it's going in the same direction as Portland. So we're that kind of vibe. There's a lot of people here who are. It was very much, hey, go get your fifth vaccine, put your mask on, stay at home. Very much just like government orders were followed, which is fine. And I mean, I was doing that for the first few lockdowns as well. I was trying to do everything, and then I think for us the transition point was we were originally told that if you just get your second dose, then lockdowns will end, the transmission will
Yeah,
stop, and everyone will be healthy. And then I think that's where there was probably the most gnarly kind of pressure, where it was like, hey, everyone, we're so over being in this situation. These people are a lot smarter than us. Let's do what we're told. Let's get out of it. And I understand, like, man, like, I'm sure if I had a conversation with your wife, she'd be like 15 times, maybe 20 times smarter than me. And that's how I found it difficult because I kept bumping into people on both sides of the argument. I'm like, dude, you seem smarter than me, and you're saying one thing. And then this person also seems smarter than me. They're saying the opposite.
yeah,
So it's like, I need an expert to decipher the experts. So I think at that time was when it got most gnarly. But I think
yeah.
like Novak Djokovic couldn't come into our country last year because he didn't have the
I
vaccine.
know, I
And then
know, dude.
this
I was
year,
gambling on that. It was one of the few things you could gamble on.
yeah. Dude, one of the best things you've ever seen is I'll get back to what I was saying in a minute. But this year, long story short, Izzy's back because he's safe this year, and
Yeah.
this year he came back, and Sportsbet in Australia have put on they've put on like a special where for every single ace that Novak Djokovic hits in this tournament of the Australian Open, Sportsbet are going to donate $1,000 to Australia's vaccination research, which I thought was just funny. I thought it was really clever, and it
Oh
was like
man, that's great.
yeah, I thought it was a great take, and actually made me want to take up gambling, which is genius by them and disappointing for me.
Yeah,
But yeah, I felt like, brother, once the vaccine started to get rolled out, and transmission was still taking place, and people were like, all right, I don't know how effective it is, maybe it's lessening the symptoms. That's where I felt like it started to relax a little bit, which is nice. And now I think, I mean, with exceptions, it doesn't really matter what side of the fence. If you haven't got the vaccine, most people in Victoria still think you're a dickhead, but they can't quite tell you why.
Yeah. Yeah, it was weird because like I was I was with my wife for like I still am with my wife, thank God. But like I
Congratulations.
was Thank you. Yeah, I was hanging out with doctors during that time, so I'd
Yep.
go from like people who were literally on the cutting edge of like what was going on, and like they were like pretty set that they were on the right side of history. And then I would leave those conversations and talk to comedians who, as you know, are some of the dumbest, most selfish people alive. And like these are people who were totally dependent on being able to perform in live groups. So they were like, I don't know, man. Like it seems like a hoax. And it's like, okay, dude, I saw you swallow a bottle cap once. All right. Uh, I'm hanging out with people who went to like Yale and Harvard, and like USC, and they're telling me to do this. So I'm going to do it
Yeah.
because like I wouldn't follow your advice for like, anything. Why am I going to listen to you on this? But then to kind of see like, I mean, I think that it was a very wild time. I just think that, a lot of people had to like re-examine just how strident they were on either side of things. Because there was a lot of people in northern Colorado and southern Wyoming who weren't getting the vaccine and they were passing away. And there were a lot of people who weren't getting the vaccine and up where I live and they were totally fine. So it was kind of weird.
Yeah, it was a strange experience, man. That's my general theory with life: is whatever advice a comedian friend gives me, just do the opposite. So if they're saying don't get it, you go,
Oh
you know
yeah,
what? I'm probably due for the booster. Is
yeah,
exactly what it should be. Yeah.
oh yeah. I mean,
How did you find? There you go.
I'm triple boosted and I still got COVID like 4 times. So whatever. Tokyo was
Yeah.
great, dude. Tokyo is huge. Like I don't know, dude. It's 14 million people. The only thing I had to compare it to was like London or New York City, and it just totally wallops both of those. It makes both of those seem like you know, like fucking Perth. It was very, very. It was crazy to be buried in that just amount of people, just inundated, no matter where you were with Japanese people. Because they don't really let anyone in. Um, it's weird. There's a lot of like American white supremacists who admire Japan because it's like an ethno state kind of. And it's like I don't like those conversations, but I had a couple like fucking freaks on Instagram hit me up and be like, "It's pretty cool what they pulled off over there, huh?" And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, it'd be like because I've done Skankfest. I've been on some podcasts that don't exactly lean to the left, and some of these people, they're like they got like the Fortran, like the Pepe emoji as their like avatar on Instagram, and they'll be like, if only we could pull that off over here, but without the Japanese. And it's like, dude, please, please don't ever talk to me again. Like this
Oh,
isn't this isn't the fandom I'm trying to like curate.
oh, it's so funny, man. I like whenever you get a message like that, I start to read too much into it. I'm like, what message am I giving off that people feel comfortable saying this stuff to
Exactly.
me?
Yeah,
And it's the
yeah.
same.
Why
It's
am
the
I a
same.
safe space for this hateful idea?
It's strange, brother. I heard a while ago. I can't remember who I heard speaking about it, but it was a psychologist speaking about how you should pay attention to what you're tagged in on social media because a lot of the time that'll give you an insight as to the way people perceive you. And my
Yeah.
wife, dude, she's a high school history teacher, very passionate about it, and it holds
What a
up. Like
saint.
she's often just tagged in beautiful moments of history, and I noticed like I would see that and I go, isn't it amazing? Like the fact that people would see that and think of you. And then I would get
Yeah.
tagged in a bloke who's figured out how to stick 4 tall cars in his asshole and go and get an X-ray. And I go, well, what am I doing? Like, what's happened here? Why is this the vibe I'm giving off? It's which is, but quite accurate on both sides of the fence. It's probably more relevant to me than being tagged in a history meme. But
How
um,
did he do it? How did he figure it out? Lots of lube?
oh, dude, it was lots of lube, and I honestly think there was an interesting history. He had to be a bisexual years ago because there was a lot of flexibility going on back there. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't his first rodeo. Is sort of what I'm trying to say. It was, but good on him. Good on. I had a lot of likes. I didn't like it because I wanted to stop that algorithm, but yeah, interesting to see. Interesting to see.
Oh, dude, that's so funny. You guys are
Oh
wild.
yeah, man, it's wild. So
I'm
you were
coming. I'm coming down there in August. I'm doing like a month all over the country of Australia in August. I'm
dude.
bringing my wife.
Oh man, let me know. We'll go if you're keen and you like me at the end of this podcast. I'll take you on a tour. I mean, you
Oh,
probably got insight
I'm
into some of the good.
charmed.
Yeah, brother.
I'm
Like there's
fun,
some.
Tyson. You're very funny. You're too funny to be so handsome. That's what sucks. I don't like
Yeah.
that.
That's right. This is the best I get as well. I did myself up all pretty for you for the podcast as well. Um, so I mean, you might be disappointed in person, but
All
what
right.
we so last time you were here, I reckon I listened to Tim Dillon's podcast when he was down in Australia, and I think I remember him talking about the trip up in Queensland. Like, were you there? You had a really interesting. I don't know how much sugar he had poured on the story, but you had a real interesting lady looking over your guys' welfare during your stay up in Queensland. Is that right? Like, I remember him just ranting about some Australian chick, how she's supposed to be more relaxed, but she was just an uptight bitch that reminded him of his mother. I'm pretty sure he said.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we were at like a. Well, here's what happened. I hope I'm not telling any stories out of school here with my beautiful friend Tim Dillon. But Tim is he's he's a very wealthy homosexual from New York, which means he does what he wants and he says what he wants, and it's very fun to be close to someone who is that okay with being themselves. So we did. I did. What was it? I flew to Adelaide. Did that show. Adelaide was fucking cool. Really charmed by Adelaide. Went to Perth, which was just a fucking mutant factory. That was like the worst show. I think we did the entire time. We did, every English speaking country in the world besides New Zealand and fucking Perth, man. Those people. I think they were like there for a meat raffle. I don't think they knew that it was a fucking comedy show, dude. It was really funny to like do like the coolest thing ever, and then Dublin, London, and then wind up in Perth and just eat our dicks, both of us.
Yeah.
like Tim did like 40 minutes in Perth because it sucked so bad. Uh, then we flew up. We flew from Perth to the fucking Daintree, dude. Which I didn't know that you guys have the oldest rainforest in the world there. Um, so yeah, like we were there and we were on this like very, very just opulent resort. Um, like the rooms were like half indoor, half outdoor, like all glass, like in literally in the rainforest, like a budding, you know, ancient trees and foliage. And Tim, he booked a tour, like a charter tour of the Great Barrier Reef, and so he books that. It's like 5 grand. They're gonna, they're bedecking the entire boat with like lobster and everything we want, just everything that a wealthy man with taste would like. And then that night, Tim starts. This is like our first or second night. Tim starts googling like I think it's called the anaconji. It's like the nightmare jellyfish. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't, but it sounds bloody dangerous.
Yeah, there's a jellyfish down there that's like as big as your thumb, man. And apparently, it stings if they don't kill you. They cause like nightmarish hallucinations for 2 weeks. Like you just have this like it's a impending sense of dread. So you're just like waiting, for death to claim you the whole time. So after he Googles that, he wakes up in the morning and the charter people are there, pick us up. They're gonna drive us up to the reef. And Tim's like, I'm sorry, I have COVID. And they're like, excuse me? And he's like, yeah, I have COVID. I can't go. And they were like, well, what are we supposed to do with all this lobster and crab? And he's like, you got the money. Throw yourselves a party. I don't care. You got to keep the money. A deal's a deal. I'm just not going. I'm sick. So he says that, and he says it loud enough. And also, I don't know, dude. Like, that's what's weird about Australia is like, it seems like a bit of a nanny state. Like, people are like, people have their eyes on you, and you have your eyes on each other down there. So like right away we get a phone call from the front desk because the people who had the boat tattled on Tim. They called the hotel and they were like, "Hi, we're here to pick up one of your guests," and they just told us we have COVID or he has COVID. So me and Ben Avery, his former producer, we went to go grab coffee, and we're like stopped on this bridge, and they're like, "Hey," and they're like we're still walking, and they're like backpedaling, It's like we have like a nuclear device on us, and they're like, "We were just told that you guys have COVID," and me and Ben were like, no. And they're like, well, someone in your cabin has COVID. We were just told that. And we were like, no. And we just start walking. And the staff is backing up again, like they're at gunpoint. So after that happened, Tim tried to explain to them, like, I lied. I didn't want to do it. So I lied. And they were like, so after that, dude, their eyes were on us like all the time. Like I've never seen so many towels get dropped off at a hotel room as I have. Like they were there like every hour, just dropping off towels. You need more candles. You need another toothbrush. And of course, Tim was infuriated by this. And also, he was kind of pissed that he couldn't get like a club sandwich at 1 a.m. in the rainforest.
Well, that's unfortunate.
He,
That's yeah. You should be able to get that.
he expects a little more, bang for his buck. As I understand that. We spent a lot of money to give us this really cool experience. So yeah, dude, we do that, and then the next day we sign up for like a tour, like a tour of like the indigenous sites of the Daintree area. What state is that or province?
The Daintree area. It's you're up in Queensland. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's by like Cairns or whatever.
Yeah, Cairns
Um,
is their city. Yeah, real north, getting real
yeah,
tropical up there.
right. Yeah, so like we get in this, we go, and we're late, like a half hour late to this fucking bus because Tim keeps his own time, God bless him. And as soon as we get there and we see there's other people on the bus, Tim's like, "No, this would be bad. How could it be good? We can't do this." So we get on there, and the first stop is like an indigenous, like what do you call them? First Nations? What's the correct
Yeah,
terminology?
oh, dude, it's impossible to say the right word these days. I'm too scared to say anything because I'll be cancelled. But yeah, First Nations people is the current in trend word to describe like an Indigenous person. That's what we used to call them
Yeah,
in 2019, but I think that's not allowed anymore.
yeah, dude. Well, I mean, we were using antiquated terms we didn't know were bad. So, yeah,
Yeah,
like indigenous was a big
you're going
step
back to
forward.
2012. You're going back to
Yeah.
2012 there, brother. That was respectful back then. You can't be saying
Oh
that
yeah, dude.
anymore.
We were doing our best. So yeah, we get on this bus and Tim just right away I sit down and I feel my pocket start to buzz. And it's just text messages from Tim like we got to get off. All these people are mutants. These are all freaks. I can't spend 8 hours with these freaks. So the first stop was like a cultural heritage center. And Tim gets off the bus and just fires up a cigarette on like sacred land. And the bus driver's like, "Oh, you can't be doing that. You can't be doing that." And Tim's like, "I'll do what I want." And then he calls a car, and we can't get a taxi anywhere because it's the middle of nowhere. I mean, like, dude, that was like we were deep in the fucking bush up there. So Tim just starts walking like down the side of the road, like down the side of like a dirt road. And I'm like, I look at Ben, I'm like, what the hell's going on? And Ben's just like laughing and nodding. And eventually we finally get a cab like sent from the resort. And Tim is able to he like talks some lady who owns like a charter bus company up there into giving us a private tour all the way up to Great Barrier Reef. And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, I'm going to give you $2,000. And she's like, that's too much money. I can't do it. And he's like, what are you talking about? Too much money? Lady, shut up. And she's like, excuse me? And he's like, you need to shut up and take my money. I will pay you cash. Be here at 8 a.m. tomorrow. So she showed up. She took us on an insane tour. We put our feet in the reef. We didn't like get in too deep because we were afraid of the terror fish. And yeah, dude. I mean, it was otherworldly. It was so beautiful. It was like Avatar. I didn't know that that kind of beauty existed. Because you drive through the rainforest and then you just kind of like pull off to the side, and all of a sudden you're just in this like lucid blue water. Uh, yeah, dude. Man, I'm really impressed by what you guys got going on down there.
Man, it's
Uh,
so it's
I
it's
fucking
interesting
dude, I
talking.
drank
Oh,
I
sorry,
drank
brother.
so many VBs in Melbourne because Tim doesn't drink. So like I'm respectful of that. And as soon as he took off back to the States, I was in Melbourne and I did a show down there and hung out with these comics. Uh, and just Jazz, is that guy's name? Jess Watkins. Do you know him down there?
Oh, Jez Watts.
Yeah, Jez Watts. Do you know
Jez, I
him?
do know him. I do know him.
Yeah. And
He's
his
a good
buddy,
bloke.
the big, yeah, his buddy's the big bald dude who like is very acerbic and has like kind of like dry humor.
I
Do you know
wonder who that
he's
is.
also from Perth?
I'm trying to think, brother. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100%
That's
sure
all
who that
right.
would
I
be.
hung out
There's
with
a lot
them,
of
and then I
big
hung
bald
out
dudes in Melbourne comedy.
for sure. I hung out with that guy Ben Knight with the red hair, who just looks like
Yeah,
Thor.
yeah, bro. He looks like Thor. He does.
He's
Yeah, he's a funny
beautiful.
man.
He's a strapping lad, dude. Very funny. And then that
Mm.
kid Huey, you know what I'm talking about?
Huey
Fucking
Robinson.
glasses. Yeah, is that him? He loves cricket.
Dude, are you talking about? Is it Hugh? Hugh with? Does he have red hair? He's the most confident redhead you've ever met, or
No, let me try and look him up.
I wonder Huey. I wonder who that could be. He loves cricket. An Aussie guy, is he?
Yeah, he's an Aussie. He's down there in Melbourne. Anyway, dude, I don't remember. He was a great kid. And anyway, I was hanging out with those guys, and I drank like so many VBs and like triple X's or quad X's, whatever the fuck they're called. I didn't know they were pints, man. I thought I was just drinking beers, and then I did the math. And I went to Hungry Jack that night. This is the first time I drank in like 10 days. And I drink a lot, when I do drink. And I went to Hungry Jack and got a couple fucking burgers. And then I woke up that night just like floating in shit, dude.
Yeah.
Completely just bloodbath of diarrhea. I ruined my bed. And I had to strip all the bedding and put it in a pillowcase and like walk out through the hotel lobby like a hobo and just throw it on the street. And then, yeah, so
It's
I
that
slept in that
that rock
hotel
star
room for five
lifestyle, brother.
nights. Yeah,
That
I
rock
know. It's
star,
so
yeah.
glamorous. Yeah, I know. Everyone should be very jealous of me and the way I'm living. And then I had the worst hangover ever, dude. And I had just like this dark night of the soul where I was like, I'm like 24 hours away from anyone who loves me. If I were to die in this hotel room, they wouldn't find me for 4 days. Like, we had the do not disturb on the door. Like, oh, it was dark, dude. It was the heaviest I've ever been mentally. Was that like 24 hours after drinking all those goddamn VBs?
Oh man, yeah, they're no Miller Lite. I saw your clip on Instagram the other
Yeah,
day. That's a
no
great
Miller Lite.
dude. That got some traction, man. That was funny. I love that. That was when you drink these, it's to tell people I'm going to have 17 more. I don't just to spoil
Yeah,
your punch. Like fantastic. Yeah, that was very funny. Yeah, VBs have got a reputation down here for that's like your Aussie stereotypes drink. If you didn't already realize that, that's essentially
yeah.
now if you're
What do
into
they
any
call
kind
those
of
guys?
class. Uh, I'm
Like
trying to
what's his name?
not
Chris Franklin.
like a
You know the
bogan.
comedian Chris Franklin? Is that his name?
I do know
Bogan.
Chris
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Franklin. Yeah, they
Like the
call him
Bogan beer,
actually.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So anyone with a
King
checkered
of the
shirt,
Bogan.
a mullet, and a VB in there. Yeah, that's right. And a pair of
Yeah,
flip flops. You're full blown bogan. And he's actually the
yeah.
leader of that group.
I heard a story about
Ah,
him, dude,
dude.
because Ari Shafir told me before I went down there about Chris Franklin. And I was like obsessed with him. And I saw his headshot at Comics Lounge on the wall. And I was like, fuck. And I was asking everyone there about Chris Franklin. They were telling me stories. And I guess he was the first Australian to have scurvy in like the last 100 years. Because all he eats is
Probably.
meat pies and drinks VB and smokes cigarettes. Like he hasn't had a vegetable. Like he gets his meat pies without onions because he won't eat any vegetables. Like that's how like hardcore he is. And I guess there was like I think it was the Melbourne Comedy Festival. Some kid was like, I'm gonna have 100 beers this weekend at the Melbourne Comedy Festival. And Chris Franklin was like, 100 beers? I'm gonna have 1,000 beers. Fuck this kid. And I think he got to like 700 beers before he was hospitalized.
Honestly, I'm surprised. I'm surprised he got done at 700 because when did you say you're coming down? Are you coming down during the festival?
I'm coming down. There's a production company called like Guilt Free Comedy that's bringing me like all over Australia and maybe New Zealand. And it's in August, and I don't know like what the dates are or whatever. He's still figuring it out, but
Yeah.
I'm doing like the whole fucking continent, dude.
Awesome. I was going to say because Chris Franklin he lives down in Tasmania, which is where
Yeah,
people that you just described live. Like that's the stereotype. Yeah,
right.
if you live in, I don't want to go into it because I've got a lot of respect for Chris Franklin, and he's also a
I do
great
too.
showrunner. Yeah, yeah. No, well, I respect in the
Yeah.
sense that if I'm in a pub and the pub is wild, I want him on my side because
Oh
he's the
yeah,
only man that a wild Australian would listen. I go into a pub in this shirt and get judged and called a gay man, and then as soon as he comes in, I get apologies because of the fact I'm associated with him. So as long as I'm on his good side, I feel safe in any sort of underground or questionable gig. I was going to say he runs a show at a place called the Exford Hotel here during the comedy
yeah.
festival, the
It's
after
like the
party
late
they
night
call it.
dirty show, right? Yeah,
Oh, bro. And so this show had a reputation about 7 years ago of just being a dangerous place for any. They used to call it the Lions Den. You'd go in and just get torn to shreds by some drunk 47-year-old whose marriage has just fallen apart. And then Chris Franklin, he took over and just no one can outbogan him. He goes up the front on a freezing cold Melbourne night in flip flops and a and
yeah,
a, a flannelette shirt with its sleeves cut off and
yeah,
like, there's no man that's not terrified, even though he's in no physical shape to fight. Just his demeanor and authority. You can just tell he spent a lot of time in those places, so he's the captain, and everyone accepts it. But it's a cool place, man. Like a lot of top Aussie comics will stop in there at the after party just to give themselves a little ego check. It's not just audiences who are there for them.
right.
A lot of the time, it's people coming in going, "Who the fuck is this guy? I really don't know." And it's a
Yeah.
good test to see how well your material holds up. But maybe you have to save that for another trip down, man. But yeah, that's fun. Have you met the guy?
No, dude, I haven't, but I think it was crazy. I went to the Botanical Gardens in Melbourne, and I listened to Ari Shafir interview him on his podcast from like 2012 or something, and and I was just like, I became obsessed with this guy because I wrote a book about a guy who's pretty much exactly Chris Franklin, but American, and like Doug Stanhope thinks Chris Franklin rules. Like he told me about him as well. So I did a pretty deep dive, and I remember walking around the botanical gardens listening to that like novelty song that he had.
Yeah, I'm a
Remember
bloke.
that
I'm a
song?
yobbo.
I'm a
Oh,
bloke.
everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
best friend's name is Rabo. Yeah, yeah, dude. So, um, yeah, like I feel like I know the guy, even though I don't know if he would enjoy my company. I'd try very hard to charm him. That's for sure.
Dude, anyone with a
Oh,
VB in their hand,
dude,
I think, yeah.
Tim Hewitt. That's the kid's name. Do you know Tim
Tim
Hewitt?
Hewitt. Tim
Yeah.
Hewitt. I think I do know
Yep.
Tim Hewitt. I know. I'm sorry to Tim if it's the bloke I'm thinking of, but Tim Hewitt. I'm going to
Kind
Google
of
him after to make
stocky,
sure I.
glasses. He was really
I might.
funny. He made me
Oh
laugh a lot
yeah.
on and off stage.
Oh man, yeah. There are some. There's some funny. There's some loose units down here as well. That's for sure. Man, it's
Loose
interesting. I can't
units,
believe
yeah.
we're 40 minutes in.
That's right.
40 minutes in, I didn't even haven't even mentioned your book yet, but it was funny just for everyone listening. The way we got started was I was on a walk here. There's a nice little beach trail, and I was walking to a suburb called Queenscliff, and running the light, bro. I heard him talking about it on Rogan's podcast a while ago. I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll check it out because I've taken like a little mental note that I gotta stop just doing nonfiction all the time and just start checking out a little more fiction style. Anyway, so I've taken the deep dive into that, and it was such a nice welcome, brother, because I never really like for me fiction. I don't know what it is, but I'm always forever from about the age of 16. I was like, oh, I'm not really doing much for myself here. I really need to invest in my own ability to get better at whatever it is I'm working on. But just
Yeah.
that ability to step into some fiction and let your imagination run wild. It was such a nice little welcome because I it sucker punched me because I heard a couple of comics and I thought they were just giving you a pump up because you're a mate of theirs. And then I think it might have been Ari. He got like this tone of sincerity in his voice, and he's like, I can't remember if it was Ari, but he was like, no, but like the guy's a comic, but fuck, like he's a he's a legitimate writer. Like this is insane. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I went and checked it out, and it's funny, man. Like I've got two little boys, and it was interesting just listening to that book. And my constant takeaway was, um, it was there was so many things, but for me it was like, hey, keep your priorities was what I kept coming back to. It was like a for me as engaging and as inspiring and as emotional, dude. I'm not just saying this to make you feel good. I feel like I'm a hard man to make tear up, but listening to Billy Ray Schaefer meet back up with his boys and try and navigate that relationship. I've got two boys myself. I was on a couple of walks just going, oh my gosh, like this
Thanks,
is
man.
real. Hey, it's beautiful, brother. And for me, the takeaway was like, all right, hey Toss, like keep work hard, like do your comedy, do your thing, but don't let it be your whole life. And also maybe stay away from cocaine when possible.
Yeah, you guys love it, dude. You guys fucking love cocaine.
And it
Oh
doesn't
my
even have to
God.
be. You know what we love? We love handing $400 over for a substance which could be baby powder, as long as it's in a little bag and we feel cool as we do it.
Oh yeah.
People are happy to take it. Um,
I mean, as soon as you guys get to America, that's the first thing you ask. Every Australian I've ever partied with is like, "What can we get a little bit of yip?" You know? It's like, dude, everywhere. You're in America now.
yeah.
It's $80 a
Oh.
gram. Have fun.
It was interesting. I heard you speak about it on Mark Maron's podcast, where he was talking. You were saying, look, it was always a dream of mine to come onto your show, but I always dreamed I'd be invited here as a comic rather
Yeah,
than an
exactly.
author. I was curious to pick. I was curious to pick your brain a little bit about that, man, because obviously I've discovered your comedy through your book, which is beautiful. Now you've got another Aussie fan for your comedy, as well as another bloke hanging out for the next release of the sequel. But
Thanks, man.
but what's that journey been like for you, man? Like it's obviously a bit of a little bit of a headspin to just venture down the world of comedy for so many years, and then all of a sudden people discovering your comedy through your writing.
Yeah. Dude, it's well, I want to say this in a way that doesn't make me sound conceited. Like, I'm very proud of my comedy. I've been doing comedy for 15 years. I think that I have I'm capable. And I do a good job. But I do think that that book is probably the best thing I've ever done creatively.
Mm-hmm.
So it was weird, Mark Maron. What was strange, dude, is like if you look at the people who read my audiobook, you know. You got Doug Stanhope, you got Chris Gethard, you got Ari Shaffir, you got Jackie Cation, you've got Bert Kreischer, Mark Maron. There's a bunch of people who are comedians who would never hang out, and a lot of their fans would never go see. Like an Ari Shaffir fan's not necessarily going to go see Chris Gethard perform, and vice versa. Uh, so it was really cool that like the entire like American comedy community, and honestly, dude, like most of like, I mean, I did shows in Berlin, I did shows in Amsterdam. People were showing up with my book, getting it signed. Like it's really been nice that fans of comedy have kind of embraced it as something that they value and they think is legitimate and like reads true. But the weirdest, so like that was cool. It's kind of a shortcut to like not a shortcut. I've been fucking doing this forever, but it was cool for like to get like the respect of larger comedians and like Stanhope liked it, he shared it. Bert Kreischer got it, he shared it. That's how Marin found out about it because I think he was like spitefully watching Kreischer's Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Like, so yeah, it was just this like giant like kind of fucking ripple effect of people getting into it. But it's weird when people like the book and then they come see me live because I'm just a comic. Like, I'm not trying to make anyone think I'm smart on stage. I use accurate vocabulary. That's like about as pretentious as I get. Like, I use the correct word when I can to say things succinctly. But yeah, so like they show up and they think they're gonna see like I think some guy with his head up his ass who's gonna like use the thesaurus to communicate, and I'm up there talking about my wife's tits and like drinking beers, and and it's kind of funny. And then it's also the other way around when people like my comedy and they buy the book and they expect it just to be like the memoirs of a fat man, and then they read it and there's like prose and stuff and like like poetry to it. And I worked really hard to make it sound like an actual literary novel. So yeah, like when people come from either side of it, I think that they wind up disappointed. Either way, no. I have noticed though when people come to the shows after reading the book, there is like a kind of like a, huh, you wrote that book? You were the guy who did that? That's bizarre. Okay, anyway, and they come back and they like it, but I think they have to kind of like lower their gauge for like you know how how erudite I'm going to be on stage and like how I'm not discussing like life and death and anything pivotal really. I just want people to laugh. That's all I've ever cared about. I don't care if they think I'm the dumbest person alive when they leave, as long as they laughed really hard.
Yeah, man, no, it's unreal. Have you always been writing like the whole way through your comedy? Because it strikes you as a book that, as I was reading it, I was like, how do you get such good descriptions? Like I remember in high school, my teachers used to say to me, hey, you try and break this down in a different way, like trying to explain it in a little more color and a little more. And I'd go, I never really was that interested. But then I hear it in your book, I'm like, that's such an insanely good way to. There's just so many areas in there. I was like, I would never even think to describe it like that. It just strikes me as a bloke who's been writing for a long time, but I don't know your background in that department, whether it's something that's been going on in the background or whether you've just you've come up to the batter's plate and you've just swung and hit a home run. Like I don't understand how that works.
I mean, I've always been like in standardized tests and stuff, in school and in college, I always got good marks on writing, and I've always like, I was writing short stories and stuff, um, since I was like, 20, 21, as soon as I allowed myself to do that kind of thing. Because for a long time, it was like, no, this is gay, stop, go do push-ups, go chase pussy, don't read books, you know. But then like I've always loved books, man. I've always loved novels. I'm opposite of you. Like you read nonfiction, and I only read fiction. Like I probably read one nonfiction book a year, and I probably read 100 books a year. Um, and usually when I read a nonfiction book, it's about like World War One or some kind of like Japanese internment camp atrocities. It's always like the most fucked up thing I can get my hands on. And so yeah, like I always read, and I think that the best way to become a good writer is to read really good writers, and you kind
Yeah.
of like synthesize, what they're doing. And it's like when you're like I'm a drummer too, and you listen to other drummers, and you kind of get like new ways to like keep rhythm and different beats or like things you might not have thought of. I think the more of whatever art you want to be good at, you ingest, the bigger like knowledge base you're gonna have, and the more you're gonna be able to compare what you're doing to other things. I do think it's weird in comedy though, because like I think it's really dangerous to watch too much stand up if you're a comic because it's really easy to forget that was someone's joke, and then you're riffing on stage and it winds up in something you say, or b just like sounding like someone. Because
Yeah.
like I definitely have had issues where like back in the day you watch too much Louis or you watch too much Norm Macdonald, or the weirdest one was Cat Williams. I remember I went through a heavy Cat Williams phase, and all of a sudden I was like talking like a pimp on stage, and it's like, oh, I've got to, I've got to curtail this. Um, so yeah, like I just read a lot, man, and I wrote a lot, and before I wrote that book, I wrote like 100,000 words, 160,000 words of two other things, and they both kind of sucked. And the first chapter of that book was like a part of this other thing I was writing, and I just was like, oh, this guy's fun to write. I know this guy. I'm afraid of being this guy. I think it's really easy to write something you're afraid of.
That's
Um,
interesting. That's interesting because that
and
was the thing that stood out to me. I was like, yeah, that it scared me too. But that's interesting to hear you say that was kind of a little bit of the fuel behind the fire of getting the words on the paper. Because yeah, I think that's what kept driving me through. I was like, oh no, like surely like this is the bottom of the barrel here. Like his
right,
life's not
yeah,
getting any worse from here.
he's
And
gonna
then
figure it out.
yeah, and
Yeah,
then he'd wake up the next morning. You're like, oh wow, no, he's done it. That's incredible. I heard you say on Mark Maron's podcast as well. I don't remember if it was Blood Meridian, but there was a book that you said you just kept reading throughout the writing process, just as a almost like a focal point of what good writing is. Was it Cormac McCarthy?
yeah,
Was
yeah,
it Blood Meridian, or have I made that up?
yeah. I was reading Blood Meridian, and I was reading Dennis Johnson's Angels, and I was reading a couple like novellas by this guy Simon Jones, who's Welsh. And I think that Blood Meridian is probably the best thing America's ever produced, and that like includes rock and roll and movies and stand up comedy. Like I think that if you were gonna like time capsule uh, something like important works, like you'd probably put some jazz in there, and then I hope you put Blood Meridian in there. Everyone says Moby Dick's our best book, but I don't know, dude. There's something about the brutality of Blood Meridian that is just like enchanting and disgusting, and so repellent, but also like you can't look away. And
Yeah,
yeah, I was just reading those books throughout to like remember like what good sentences, like what the rhythm and like meter of a good paragraph sounds like. Yeah,
it's an art form in itself. Hey, it's yeah. Before I heard you talk about Blood Meridian, I can't remember his name. He's like the lead singer of Pink Floyd. He was on Rogan's podcast a while ago, and he recommended that
Roger
Rogan.
Waters.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, he recommended a book called All the Pretty Horses.
Oh, it's beautiful. Oh my
Yeah.
God, it's a love story about like two boys growing up on like a Texas ranch, and they go to Mexico because their horses are or like I get it mixed up with The Crossing. That's part of the Border trilogy. But yeah, it's just these two boys, and they like go to Mexico to find work, and yeah, it's gorgeous, man. It's a great place to start if you want to read Cormac McCarthy. I mean, The Road is a really good way to dip your toes in because it's like really short and straightforward and about a post-apocalypse. But yeah,
Oh,
All the
dude,
Pretty
yeah,
Horses
yeah.
is like gorgeous. It's
Wait,
gorgeous.
is that Cormac McCarthy, The Road?
Mhm.
I didn't realize that was him because that was
Yeah.
another one on a when I was going down my fiction rabbit hole. That I think Ryan. I don't know if you know Ryan Holiday, the Stoicism guy. Like ego is the enemy. Um, I'm not sure. He's written a lot of books. He's sort of like a self development guru, but focusing a lot on Stoicism and how the Stoics lessons can apply so nicely to our life today. But he has an awesome book list as well, and I think I got that recommend. I've definitely listened to The Road, but I didn't realize it was him. It's such a new world to me. But yeah, what other books do you put in your sort of your top couple, like after Blood Meridian, and there was another one you
Angels
mentioned on
is
Angels. Yeah.
Angels is my favorite book. Yeah, that's like my favorite book. I think Blood Meridian is the best book. Yeah, I don't know. Flannery O'Connor wrote a bunch of amazing short stories. She's probably the best American short story author that we have in America. What else? Oh, there's a guy named like if you're so the thing about books is like I've read a lot of them, and you don't want to like tell someone to read Blood Meridian or Suttree or Moby Dick like as their first like foray into fiction because they are really hard to read. You got to have like a
What
thesaurus next to you. What's
Well, it's
that?
funny you say it, man. I was just going to say it's funny you say that. I didn't want to tell you, but just as you say that, I heard you say that on Mark Maron's podcast, and I was like, all right. And I've been listening to it through Audible because I spend an hour and a half driving back and forth to Melbourne for gigs. We're a bit out of town, so Audible
Yeah.
seems to be the best way. And Blood Meridian, man, I reckon I got an hour in, and I
No.
was like, I'm not ready for it. I've got to
Yeah.
and I kind of hit pause, and I was like, I know it's the same reason I can't get into Moby Dick because I still could be a pot like there's a very good chance I'm partly retarded when it comes to these kind of books. So I know the book's not the issue because they seem to pass the test of time, and people like yourself respect it. So I'm like, all right, Tyce, this is your issue and something to work up to. But it's funny you say it like that. Like you
No.
wouldn't venture into the world of fiction with Blood Meridian, which is essentially what I've tried to do.
Yeah, dude, don't do that. That's a fool's errand. I don't know how you're supposed to consume Blood Meridian if you're driving or on a walk, like anything passively. Like I think you have to lay in like a fucking like black dark room with your hands crossed across your chest like a vampire and with your eyes closed and just like focus on every word. Because reading it is intimidating, and I've read it like 6 or 7 times. And yeah, there's a guy named Jean Patrick Manchette, and he's a French guy from like the 60s through the 80s, and he writes these really cool crime novels that they're French, so they delve into existentialism, stoicism, all of your nihilism, all my favorite isms, um, and but they're still like about like hitmen and like uh, like insurrectionist groups who want to blow up the palace. Like they're really cool books, but they're also smart, and they're easy to read, but also like rewarding despite their length. So I would say maybe try and read like The Prone Gunman by Manchette, or I mean the Road is super easy to read. It's a boy and his dad, and there's a bunch of human slavers going around, trying to turn people into sex holes and eat each other. Like it's really cool stuff. It's probably 160 pages. Don't need a big vocabulary to get through that. Huh. Yeah, there's so many books, dude. I think that if it's people come up to you and they're like, "I liked your book. It reminded me of like Bukowski, or it reminded me of like Chandler, it reminded me of Hunter S. Thompson," and you're like, "Thank you," but that just kind of shows me like you have only read like 2 books and they were both by Bukowski, because it doesn't sound like that at all. You're trying to give me a compliment because this is like these are the reference points you have, are these authors that you read when you were 19 and trying to impress a girl. And it's like, I understand that books are boring. Like there's so many
Yeah,
better ways to entertain yourself. There's movies, television's never been better. Video games are telling these amazing stories. Like to sit down and read a book is like, why would you do that? It's just like,
yeah,
I like it. And I hope that no one ever feels bad about not reading books, because I haven't seen every movie. Like I haven't seen every good television show. I'm missing out on a huge part of the cultural conversation when it comes to many different things. I can talk about specifically like American novels from like 1928 forward. Like that's all I really know. So yeah, if anyone's ever trying to make you feel dumb about not reading books, just tell them to fucking can
yeah. Serious.
Yeah.
It's funny, man. It's funny that you say like your reference points dictate what people refer to you as. I wish I had found that out at the start, because it wouldn't have taken much for me to tell you that you remind me of Martin Luther King in his autobiography.
Not
But,
yeah, not Junior either. The first one, his dad. Yeah.
the very first guy. Dude, I'm aware of the time. I know you got to be upstairs in a minute, so I won't hold you up anymore. But man, I'm so glad we got a chance to sit down and have the chat. It's been a long time coming, and it's
Well,
a
Tyson,
great
I
honor
owe you
that.
an apology, man. I was dropping the ball left and right, so I really appreciate your persistence and you allowing me a second chance. I had a really good time, dude. I
It's
mean, honestly,
awesome.
God, dude, you get hit up for a lot of fucking bad podcasts and you do them, and you're like, fuck, why did I say yes to that? So,
Oh no, I
uh,
get it.
yeah,
I get it.
I don't regret this at all, and I'm really grateful that you had me on, dude. You're a
Awesome.
charmer, and I look forward to taking our wives to a nude beach down there in Melbourne and
I, I,
seeing who
I
got the
cannot
better
wait
deal.
I can't wait to get an ice cream and look at your wife's boobs. It's going to be fantastic.
Dude, so is August is like winter there, right?
What's August? Summer's till February. Summer, autumn, February till I think.
It's upside
Is
down,
that?
right?
Yeah, dude. Now I'm confused. It's spring. It's spring. Is
Spring?
that
Cool.
right?
So
No,
it won't be a million degrees, will it?
no. Like every Australian right now is pissing themselves laughing at me because I'm not convinced I've told you the right season. Wait, let me figure it. So February's the end of summer. February, March, April, May is autumn. June, July,
Damn, so you are
August.
you are
Yeah,
just a
I think
pretty
it might
face,
be
Tyson.
winter, brother.
You had me swindled
It's,
for a minute, but here we
it's
are.
hey, bro. Hey, you're so much like Bukowski. You're so much like Bukowski when you say that.
Damn, you had me, man. I was
Dude,
blinded
I
by those
can't.
teeth.
I should have ended the podcast when I could have. It's funny, man. No, it was great to have you on. It was funny. I was saying to my wife the other day that trying to get you on the podcast, it was a little bit like you've got to draw the line. You've got to be careful because all of a sudden there's a fine line between showing someone you're keen to talk to them and just
Yeah,
turning into a pain in the ass stalker. So it sounds like I've
no,
nailed that balance and it all worked out. But
you
man,
really
that
did,
was it
man.
was a lot of fun, brother. Really good sitting down and talking to you. So I appreciate it.
My biggest concern with Australia right now is not like the scorpions or like, everyone's like, oh, everything's trying to kill you there. I didn't have that experience because I was in a bunch of huge cities, which are very metropolitan and like stand on their own against any other place in the world. Like Australia fucking rules. I'm sure the middle's a death trap, but I am very concerned with like accidentally going there in August and for some reason it's still the summer and like having to experience an Australian summer when I'm 300 pounds. Like I plan most of my year. Like I don't go to the American South in the summer. Like I go there in the spring and I go there in the winter because I don't want to be sweaty for a week. So I really hope that I did this correctly and it's actually like this autumn or winter while I'm there in August.
Make sure you Google it, bro, because I know that I don't need to say this, but there should be no confidence taken from me and the fact that I don't know my own nation's seasons. It's very
Yeah,
disappointing.
dude. I've got to say I'm pretty rocked by this.
Yeah,
This is a revelation.
I'm going to send this to a producer and make sure that this is edited well to make me look very smart and make you look like a dickhead.
Well, I thought I was going to look dumb as hell asking at the end of this great conversation. So, what season is August? And then, thank God, man. Thank God we're both drowning together.
I love it, brother. All right, man. All right, you get out of here. Appreciate it, man. And yeah, I'd love to catch up with you again.
Thank you. Hey, listeners, follow at Sam Talent on Instagram or samtalent.com so to see dates. Because like I said, I'm coming down there and I'm hitting everywhere down in Oz, man. Can't wait to come back.
For sure. And in the description, I'll make sure I link your book directly to your website because I know there's a nice little cut coming into your pocket than on
Yeah,
Amazon.
but
So,
hey, brother, honestly, dude, if you live in Australia or anywhere outside the United States, order it from Amazon
oh,
because
yeah, yeah,
it
postage.
costs like it's like $30 US to ship it down there. So just get it from Amazon. I appreciate the thought, but I'll sign it when I come down there. Come bring it to a show and I'll sign it that way.
Sweet. All right, bro. Hey, I'll leave you to
Yeah,
it. I'll see you later.
appreciate you, dude.
Awesome. See you, everybody.